In Sydney, a one-bedroom apartment will set you back $900,000. In a dusty little town 5 hours east of Kalgoorlie, an entire 3-bedroom house just sold for less than the price of a second-hand Hilux, and nobody wanted it. This isn't a joke. This isn't clickbait. Right now, scattered across Western Australia, there are 10 mining towns where houses are so cheap they're practically being given away. One of them killed over 2,000 of its own residents. Another was wiped off the map by the government in 2007. A third has a population of 13 people and 1 horse who lives inside the pub. Today, we're driving deep into the red dirt of WA to count down 10 towns where the great Australian dream costs about the same as a flat screen telly. We'll go from number 10 all the way to number 1, and trust me, number 1 will change how you think about this country forever. Before we get into it, if you love proper Aussie stories nobody else is telling, hit that subscribe button. It actually helps us keep digging up videos like this one. Right, let's get into it. Number 10. Kambalda. 630 kilometres east of Perth, this is the town that kickstarted Australia's entire nickel industry back in 1966. For 60 years, Kambalda was the proof that Australia could be a global mining superpower. 2-income families, brand new utes in every driveway, a proper FIFO town with a future. Then 2024 happened. Global nickel prices collapsed. Indonesia flooded the market with cheaper supply. And in a matter of months, 3 underground mines around Kambalda shut down almost simultaneously. Hundreds of jobs gone. Families packed up. The for sale signs went up faster than the local agents could print them. What makes Kambalda different from the other towns on this list is that it's not a 100-year-old gold rush relic. This is happening right now. The houses going on the market today were built in the 1980s and 1990s. Brick veneer, 3 bedrooms, 2-car garages, proper Aussie suburban homes. And they're listing for prices that would buy you a parking space in Bondi. The cruel joke? Nickel is supposed to be the metal of the electric vehicle revolution. Kambalda should be booming. Instead, it's becoming the first modern ghost town of the EV age. Locals I've read interviews with say the same thing. They've seen this cycle before. Their parents saw it, and they reckon the boom will come back. But the kids? The kids are leaving for Perth and not looking back. Number 9. Laverton. 950 kilometres northeast of Perth, on the edge of the Great Victoria Desert. This town has died and come back to life so many times the locals have stopped counting. In 1903, just 3 years after it was gazetted, Laverton had 400 residents, a thriving gold mine called the British Flag, and ambitions of becoming a major goldfields hub. By 1916, just 13 years later, the population had crashed to 45 people, an 89% collapse in just over a decade, all because the railway closed and the ore body petered out. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. In the 1960s, a prospector named Ken Shirley discovered nickel nearby. The town came back to life. Then nickel crashed. Then gold came back. Then it crashed again. Laverton has been resurrected at least 3 separate times, like some kind of mining town Lazarus. And here's where it gets interesting. For anyone looking at the real estate listings, because the town has died and revived so many times, the housing stock is a strange mix of 1900s tin and timber miners' cottages, 1970s fibro nickel boom builds, and modern brick FIFO houses. You can pick from any era of Australian construction history and pay outback prices for the privilege. The people who stayed through all the cycles, they've got a saying. The next boom is always coming. They believe it the way some people believe in religion. And honestly, given Laverton's history, they might be right. Number 8. Wiluna. In the mid-1930s, this town in the Midwest had a population of over 9,000 people. Think about that. 9,000. It had a regular passenger train, a scheduled air service, a hospital, multiple hotels, and one of the most advanced gold processing plants in the entire Southern Hemisphere. Today, a few hundred residents. Most of the European miners are long gone. Wiluna's downfall came from a problem the Boomtown engineers never properly solved. The gold here was locked up in arsenic and sulfide ores. Incredibly difficult to process. Incredibly dangerous to work with. When gold prices dropped after World War II, the maths stopped working. The mine closed. The trains stopped running. The town emptied out almost overnight. But here's the part that hits you when you actually visit. The open-cut pits that the miners dug out have filled up with salt water over the decades. Imagine these massive turquoise lakes sitting inside red rock craters in the middle of the desert. It looks like another planet. Drone footage of Wiluna's flooded pits looks more like Mars than Australia. There's a deeper story here too. The town that European miners briefly dominated is now a predominantly Aboriginal community, the Martu people, who were custodians of this land for tens of thousands of years before any prospector turned up with a pan. In a strange way, Wiluna is one of the few mining towns where the original people of the land outlasted the colonizers. The boom came, the boom went, and the traditional owners are still there. Number 7. Cookini. At its peak, around 1907, Cookini had a population of approximately 3,500 people. It had 3 breweries. It had hotels, a swimming pool, a hospital, a stock exchange, and was seriously tipped to become bigger than Kalgoorlie. People were betting fortunes on Cookini being the next great Western Australian city. Today, Cookini has a permanent population of around 13 people. Yes, 13. And the most famous resident of Cookini isn't a person at all. He's a horse named Willie. About 6 years ago, Willie, a retired harness racer, wandered into the Grand Hotel pub one afternoon, decided he liked the place, and never left. He now lives there. He follows tourists around. He drinks out of the trough out the front. He is, by every meaningful measure, a local. The Grand Hotel itself is still operating, run by Margaret and Kevin Pusey, who pour beers for the trickle of grey nomads and curious travellers who make the detour off the Goldfields Highway. The cottages around the pub are the kind of corrugated iron, low-roof miners' homes that haven't changed since Federation. Some of them are habitable, some of them are not. All of them can be bought for prices that would make a Sydney real estate agent laugh until they cried. The strangest part? Cookini isn't sad. It's quiet, sure. But the people who chose to stay there chose it on purpose. They wanted out of the cities. They wanted stars at night so bright you could read a paperback by them. And they got it. Number 6. Kew. In the year 1900, Kew was a roaring boomtown of approximately 10,000 people. It had paved streets, gas lighting, a grand sandstone government building, a Masonic lodge with a tin roof and bluestone walls, and one of the most ornate post offices in regional Australia. Walking down the main street today, you can still see all of it. The buildings are still there. The architecture is still there. The people aren't. By 1933, Kew's population had crashed to fewer than 500. Today, it sits at about 120 residents. That's a 98.8% population collapse. Imagine if Melbourne lost 98% of its people, but all the buildings stayed standing. That's Kew. The reason it didn't get demolished like other ghost towns? Kew had the good fortune of being made out of stone, not tin. The Murchison was a stone and brick boom, not a tin shed boom. When the gold ran out and people left, the buildings just stayed. There was no point pulling them down. Nobody wanted the land badly enough to bother. What this means for buyers today is something genuinely unusual. You can purchase a heritage-listed building in Kew, a piece of 19th century Australian architecture that would cost millions anywhere south of Geraldton, for the price of a decent second-hand car. The catch is you also inherit responsibility for maintaining it. In a town where the nearest hardware store might be a couple of 100 kilometres away, a community of 120 people is somehow holding together a town built for 10,000. That takes a particular kind of stubborn. The kind Australia used to specialise in. Right, halfway through the countdown. If you're still with me, and I really hope you are, please smash that like button. It honestly makes a massive difference for stories like this getting seen by other Aussies. Tell me in the comments which of these towns you'd actually consider living in. I'm reading every single one. Now let's get into the top 5, because this is where it gets properly mental. Number 5, Coolgardie. They call it the mother of the goldfields, and for good reason. When Arthur Bailey and William Ford struck gold here in 1892, they set off the biggest movement of people in Australian history. Within years, Coolgardie's population had exploded to somewhere between 15 and 30,000 people, depending on which historical source you trust. It had 23 hotels, 23. It had 2 stock exchanges, 7 newspapers, 3 breweries, electric street lighting before most of Perth, and one of the busiest railway stations in the colony. Coolgardie was, briefly, the 3rd largest town in Western Australia. Then Paddy Hannon found gold at Kalgoorlie, about 40 kilometres east, and in mining, 40 kilometres east is the difference between life and death. Kalgoorlie's gold reef turned out to be one of the richest on Earth, the Golden Mile. Coolgardie's gold turned out to be shallow and patchy. The miners packed up and moved. The hotels closed one by one. The grand 1890s buildings were left standing on a near-empty main street. Today, Coolgardie's population is around 800 people. The buildings remain, and they are spectacular. The Warden's Court, the Marble Bar Hotel facade, the old railway station. It's like walking through a movie set, except nothing's been built. It's all original. Housing-wise, Coolgardie sits in that strange sweet spot. It's 2 hours from Kalgoorlie, which still has a working economy. So, you can buy a heritage cottage for a song and commute to a real job. A few savvy buyers have figured this out already. Most haven't. It's the closest thing on this list to an actual bargain, if bargain is the word for a town that lost 95% of its peak population. Number 4, Norseman. In 1894, a prospector named Laurie Sinclair tied his horse up for the night near a salt lake about 200 kilometres south of Kalgoorlie. According to the legend, the next morning Sinclair found that his horse, named Norseman, had kicked up a gold nugget with his hoof. Sinclair pegged the claim. The town was named after the horse. There's a bronze statue of Norseman the horse on the main street to this day. For over 100 years, Norseman ran on gold. And here's the strange part. There's still active gold mining in the area right now. This isn't a dead town. It's a working town. And yet, in 2024, a 3-bedroom house at 76 Angove Street, Norseman sold for $130,000. That was the cheapest house sale in the entire state of Western Australia for that month. Another property in town is currently listed at around $20,000. Less than a used Toyota Corolla. Less than most Australians spend on a wedding. The reason? Norseman's population is declining at a rate that's almost hard to believe. According to Raiwa figures, the town has been losing residents at roughly 25% per year. 1 in 4 people gone every year. The school is shrinking. The shops are closing. The hospital is barely hanging on. A town named after a horse. And now the horses outnumber the buyers. What makes Norseman so brutal is that it should be working. There's a job. There's a mine. There's a highway. And still, nobody wants to live there. Which tells you something uncomfortable about modern Australia. Number 3, Big Bell, 30 kilometres west of Kew. And this one isn't a town with cheap houses. This is a town with no houses left at all. But you need to know about it because it's the cautionary tale that haunts every name on this list. Big Bell was gazetted in 1936. It was deliberately designed as a model mining town by Premier Gold Mining, who discovered a massive ore body and wanted a permanent settlement to support it. They built proper streets, a school, a cinema, a hospital, and the Big Bell Hotel, which at one point boasted the longest bar in Australia. 850 people called it home. It lasted 19 years. By 1955, the ore body was exhausted. The mine closed. And unlike Gwalia or Kew, Big Bell's residents didn't slowly trickle away. They left, almost en masse, within a couple of years. The buildings were either dismantled and trucked elsewhere, or simply abandoned to the spinifex. Today, the only thing left standing is the shell of the Big Bell Hotel. The longest bar in Australia is now a roofless ruin in the middle of nowhere, photographs of which look like something out of a post-apocalyptic film. There's no power, no water, no road maintenance. You drive in on a dirt track. You walk through the ruin, you drive out. You cannot buy a house in Big Bell. There are no houses to buy. The land itself, technically, has owners on paper somewhere. But realistically, the town has been reclaimed by the desert. Big Bell is the worst-case scenario. It's what happens when a one-industry town loses its industry and nobody bothers fighting for the place. The longest bar in Australia, served by ghosts. Number 2, Gwalia. And this is where the story turns properly cinematic, because Gwalia was once managed by a man who would later become the President of the United States of America. In 1898, a 23-year-old American mining engineer named Herbert Hoover took a job as manager of the Sons of Gwalia gold mine just outside Leonora. He lived in a beautiful corrugated iron residence on the hill, a house that still stands today called Hoover House, currently operating as a guest house. 30 years after he left Gwalia, Hoover would be elected the 31st President of the United States. For 65 years, the Sons of Gwalia mine ran. The town around it grew to about 1,500 people, mostly Italian, Yugoslav, and Greek immigrants who'd built tin and Hessian cottages with their own hands. They owned them outright. They raised families there. They were home. Then came the 21st of December, 1963. The mine's main head frame was damaged. Management did the maths overnight and announced the mine would close immediately. The state government dispatched 2 trains from Coolgardie. Over the course of a single weekend, the population of Gwalia dropped from 1,500 to approximately 40 people. People walked away from houses they fully owned. Pots still on stoves? Photos on the walls. They could only take what fit on the train. Today, those cottages still stand, preserved as an open-air museum. You can walk through them and see plates left on tables, beds still made, calendars frozen on December 1963. It's the most haunting town in Australia and one of the most underrated. Hoover House looms above it all. A reminder that the man who left Gwalia became the most powerful person on earth, while the town itself was abandoned in a weekend. Number 1, Wittenoom, the town that killed more than 2,000 of its own people. From 1943 to 1966, the Pilbara town of Wittenoom mined blue asbestos, the most lethal form of asbestos known to science. The mine was run by a subsidiary of CSR called Australian Blue Asbestos. The company kept the operation running for 23 years, despite mounting medical evidence that the dust was killing the workforce. The roads of Wittenoom were paved with asbestos tailings. The school playground had asbestos in the dirt. Children played in it. Mothers hung washing in it. The whole town was, effectively, a slow-motion crime scene. As of 2024, more than 2,000 of the approximately 20,000 people who lived or worked in Wittenoom had died of mesothelioma or other asbestos-related diseases. People are still dying today. The cancer can take 40 years to appear. A child who breathed Wittenoom dust in 1965 might only be receiving the diagnosis now. The Western Australian government finally acted decisively in 2007, officially degazetting the town, removing it from maps, from road signs, from government records. Power was cut. The post office closed. A handful of stubborn holdouts refused to leave, the last of them only departing in 2015 when the electricity was permanently disconnected. After a bushfire in late 2022 destroyed most of what was left, demolition crews moved in and finished the job by 2023. You cannot buy a house in Wittenoom. There are no houses. there is no town. There is a grid of asphalt streets leading nowhere, surrounded by the most beautiful red gorges in Australia, sitting on land so contaminated that visitors are warned to keep their car windows shut. This is the ultimate $1 town, because in Wittenoom, the property is worth nothing, and the liability is worth everything. So what does all of this actually mean? 10 towns. From a 19-year-old ghost town built around the longest bar in Australia, to a place erased from maps because asbestos killed 2,000 people. From a town named after a horse, to a town once run by a future US president. From 3 working nickel mines closing in a single year, to 23 pubs that closed over a century. Here's the thing nobody in the city wants to hear. Australia doesn't really have a housing crisis. Australia has a geography crisis. There are homes out there, actual, livable, 3-bedroom Australian homes, selling for less than a deposit on a Sydney apartment. They're just 5, 6, 10 hours from the nearest city. And the towns they sit in are dying. The question isn't whether you can afford one. The question is whether you could live there, whether you could handle a population of 13 people and 1 horse, whether you could watch the only pub close, whether you could explain to your kids why the nearest high school is a boarding school 4 hours away. Some people can, some people already do. The ones who stayed in Coolgardie, in Kew, in Coolgardie, they didn't get stuck there. They chose it. And maybe that's the real story buried under all the cheap house prices. If this video taught you something you didn't know about your own country, do me a favor. Subscribe, because there's a lot more of these stories coming. And drop a comment telling me which town you'd actually live in if you had to pick one. I'll see you in the next one.